I am Dave Henning with the Fresh Start Podcast, fresh ideas for business and personal growth. And today, my guest on the show is James Pyle. And James is a dynamic, energetic serial entrepreneur. He specializes in lean startups, transformational turnarounds, rapid scaled exits, and he has a tenacious work ethic and track record of being self motivated, top number one producer and leader in any environment. And we've got a nice conversation to ready to get started. Welcome, James.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
You help kingdom entrepreneurs and coaches transcend their limitations and achieve goals to thrive in their vocation. So let's get going here. What in the world is step zero? What does that mean?
Yeah, this is a great question. So step zero is actually something that we developed several years back. And it had to do with the fact that so many people who are into self-improvement and self-development, they want to get on to the, 5 steps for this or 7 or 10 steps for that. And what we discovered is that in order for anybody to successfully begin and complete any program, we must first have self-awareness. So we actually call self-awareness step zero because it is actually at that ground landing floor of the staircase that you're going to ascend that we must have awareness of ourselves. And the key here is I like to explain this just like in a GPS. You're going to input to get directions somewhere. It's going to ask you 2 questions. First and foremost is, where are you going? Second, where are you starting from? And so the key here with step zero and self-awareness is to know exactly where we're starting from so that we can reverse engineer the path to where we want to get to. And that's really the most important part here is that we have to have the awareness of where we're starting at. If I'm looking to get directions from, let's say, Los Angeles to San Francisco, I'm not going to put Dallas in as my starting point if I want accurate directions, right? So that's what step zero is, and that's why we call it that.
That's a great answer because I related to that, James, from this perspective is that I'm just kind of a serial entrepreneur that's more of a workaholic guy. So I'm reading another book on marketing. I've loved marketing and advertising all my life, having worked at 10 radio stations around the United States. And then now with what we're doing now with all the software and the podcast. And so my tendency is to skip step zero and jump right into, okay, what am I going to do first? And how can I get this going? And we need to hit the pause button is what I hear you saying and start at the starting point with your personal mental GPS. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's 100% correct. We have to know where we are in order to be able to figure out how we can reverse engineer where we want to get to. And yeah, just like you're saying there, I was similar a lot in the past. I even sometimes still have that habit come up, and that's one of the challenges of serial entrepreneurs is that, we possess a certain skill set where we're very good at becoming completely obsessed, if you will, about something and able to put all of our energy into it. But then at a certain point, that passion dries up and that energy dies out. And it's about being able to have the awareness of staffing a team around us so that we can get the first 40% of the puzzle built and get everybody else on board to continue building it and see it through to fruition and completion.
It reminds me of people who may be like a tech person in the Silicon Valley or something. If they got some extra money, they have a passion to invest in some kind of a business, be it a restaurant or a small business or whatever. And based on their passion, but their passion doesn't necessarily equate to business knowledge and acumen.
So this is so true.
You can dig a big pit right there before you even get started if you don't start at step zero like you're talking about. So what would you say is the most important skill actually for an entrepreneur or anyone to master?
Sure. So without giving the, I guess, quick and easy answer of it being self-awareness, the actual skill set, I see that more as a habit and a characteristic trait of self-awareness. But the actual skill set that's the most important skill set for any entrepreneur and, in fact, any leader to develop, and, in fact, pretty much everybody in the world to develop, the most important skill set is sales, because everything is sales, whether we're selling our team on getting on board with our vision, whether we're actually selling to a client or a customer our products or services, whether we're selling to our friends or our significant other or our children or whoever in our life. Life is continually about persuasion. And that's why we always encourage people the number one most important skill set is to develop is sales. I'm also highly biased in this because thankfully and gratefully, I was born a natural salesman. And I began selling when I was 8 years old, when I would put two rakes on the handlebars of my bicycle and ride around the town I grew up in and knock on doors and just ask people if I could rake their yard for 30 or 40 bucks. And so, just having developed sales at an early age, I was always passionate about it and loved it. And I've always studied it my whole life. And I've found it to be the one skill set that can make the biggest difference for an entrepreneur, whether it's a startup or somebody coming into a takeover or any situation, is definitely salesmanship.
And we have to keep in mind that sales is not a dirty word.
That's 100%. 100%. And where I'm speaking from, and actually this goes in line with the kingdom entrepreneurship that we coach people in, is it has a lot to do with honesty and integrity. And the reason I can speak on this is because I spent a lot of years not operating in that capacity. It can be a very, very challenging thing to do sales and to be very highly successful at it as a top producer when you only tell the absolute truth. Including things like not even saying there's only 3 left when there's 50 in the warehouse to cause some scarcity and get people to buy, right? Selling only on the truth, it definitely presents an interesting challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say, because nowadays people love to buy, but they hate to be sold. And so I like to break down that barrier simply by saying, look, this may or may not be for you, but it's my job to at least give you the information so you can make an intelligent decision. So it's reframing how we say what we say so that we don't come across obnoxious and pushy, but we're actually solving somebody's problem or issue. Like Dr. Robert Schuller once said, find a hurt and heal it, find a need and fill it. And that's the really key to sales, because I have always kind of loved selling stuff. I was selling in-ground swimming pools when I was 16 years old at a store down the street. My friends' parents had a swimming pool store. But all that to say, when I became a disc jockey, I could be in the studio all by myself, so comfortable with speaking to thousands of people, but I was extremely uncomfortable from my shy childhood about going out and being in the sales department. But when I needed to ask for a raise, my boss says, well, it's not in the budget, but I'll give you a desk in that room and you can give yourself a raise as much as you want. And it really took a transition from me mentally, that step zero thing that you're talking about, actually, to really excel at sales. And as it turns out, a retired preacher gave me a book by W. Clement Stone, The Success System That Never Fails. It's an old book. He was the salesman. He was the general manager for Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And that one book that an old retired preacher handed it to me, here, you can use this book. I still have it. I actually brought it with me. That's like 40 years ago. I've been carrying this book around, and it just changed my life in terms of how I framed it in my own mind of how I was going to do what I did. And I became a #1 salesman in that field for many years. All that to say, I'm talking too much. So let's talk about what is Kingdom Entrepreneurship. What is it?
Yeah, totally. Just one quick other point on what you're talking about with sales there. It's definitely solving a problem for people. That's the thing I've been most passionate about my whole life. And when I was younger, I was more interested in like what I got from a situation, being able to sell and make money. Whereas like you're saying, and a lot of people have a stigma in their mind of, a salesman, somebody's going to try to ram this thing down my throat, or a sleazy car sales guy who's going to try to, pull one over on you. And the key here in practicing sales is practicing moral, ethical, and honest sales. And this ties into the kingdom entrepreneurship. So kingdom entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs and coaches who have actually their purpose driven. They have a heart for Christ. They believe that there's more to this life than just what we're seeing in the natural. They believe in the supernatural. They also follow a certain line of principles most often. These principles are things like, first and foremost, they're focused in adding value every single situation that they're in, first and foremost. They're also servant leaders. They actually approach their entire leadership of their organization, inside and outside, from a servant perspective. And they see their role as actually them working for everybody else in the company, right? And because of that, they're able to serve others and get them to excel higher than they could on their own and be able to help the team maximize. The other thing is giving back. Kingdom entrepreneurs love to give back. They understand and know that, life is more than a job or a particular career. It's actually a vocation. It's a calling that's on our life, that's been sown into our heart before we were born. And they know that part of kingdom entrepreneurship is being able to contribute to others, whether it's time or resources or anything else, to give back. And then the last one is, I've talked about this a couple of times here, is has to do with honesty. It's honesty and integrity. These are the type of characteristics, people that actually believe business can be conducted in an ethical, moral way. It doesn't have to be one person winning or one party losing. Every party can win, and we can create a world of sustainable business where people are able to win. There's enough pie for everybody to get a slice. And really what we found is that a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, first-time entrepreneurs, doesn't matter. Usually people get to a certain point of success in their life, whether it's in business or in a different career. And then they start asking them questions of, hey, why? Why? They get into the Socratic why exercises. Why did I take this job? Why am I doing this line of work? Why am I not happy every day? And they realize that there's more to life, and they have a hunger to know more and to be able to actually experience the happiness a lot of people talk about. So what we coach people in is a lot of the underlying principles and habits that will actually lead us to creating a life of happiness and thriving in our vocation.
So kingdom entrepreneurship, if I could pronounce it correctly, would be helpful. Kingdom entrepreneurship is really all about biblical principles, what I hear you saying. I actually was just reading this morning in the book of Matthew, the Beatitudes, and then from there, right after that, it talked about what I call the second mile principle. If someone wants to go 1 mile with them, go the second mile. And that's really been my, it's more than a philosophy. It's really my mental state and lifestyle and choice is to give more than I get. And there's also a verse in the Bible that talks about do everything you do as if unto the Lord, which means that when I was buffing floors as a janitor going through graduate school and seminary, I made an effort to buff out and wax the floors that were in a winter climate where salt was eating into the entryway. And the principal of the school really complimented me on that. And I just thought, it's just something that I do because I want to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. And what you're talking about right there is at the heart of kingdom entrepreneurship. It's, understanding that we're here to fulfill a role and we're here to give more than we receive. And it's kind of one of these funny things about life. I'm sure you've experienced it. The more we give, the more we receive. And we don't give in order to receive. We give for the sake of giving without care for recognition or what is done with our gift. And through doing that, we receive incredible things back. And one of the things that I receive the most when I give is actually just the happiness inside of me, the love that I feel, that vibration within my heart and in my spirit. And one of the questions that we get often is, how do you quantify happiness? Well, you got people like Gary Vee who talk about, hey, pursue happiness. You were talking about earlier, maybe there's a person in Silicon Valley making good money. They want to strike out and pursue their passion, this kind of thing. I always encourage people, invest in your happiness. And they're like, well, how do you quantify it? And well, that's different for everybody. It's completely subjective to you. What makes you happy? Does sitting on the beach for 4 hours a day staring at the ocean make you happy? Cool. Find a way to go do more of that. Does working 18 hours a day, taking stimulants and all kinds of prescription pills and drinking alcohol and smoking drugs make you happy? Well, go for it. But I can tell you from my experience, it don't make you happy. And I know a lot of other people who have tried those paths and it don't make them happy either. And, what you're talking about there is just awesomeness of biblical principles and of understanding that there's a bigger picture here. We're playing a part in the best movie ever made. And I always share one quick thing with people. I used to love Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson because he had all these funny sayings when he was a wrestler back in the day. And one of my favorite sayings he always said was, know your role and shut your mouth. And I think that we as human beings could do a better job of trying to give creative input on the creator's movie and just know our role and shut our mouth and read our lines from the script. So,
yeah, absolutely. You got that. Absolutely right. Well, what do you wish you could tell your younger self about life and entrepreneurship if you had to talk to yourself? By the way, I need to interject this. I always say this because I have discovered with the service that we are using that connects podcasters for these interviews is I call them divine appointments, not coincidences. And that's exactly the way I see things. And I don't care what your tradition is, your background, your religion, or what it is. As it turns out, there's something going on when it comes to divine appointments, and it's above and beyond anything we could ever ask or imagine.
Yeah, totally. This goes right into what I would love to share with my younger self. The things I would love to share with my younger self about life and entrepreneurship are to press into my faith and to press into the inner voice that I was hearing inside myself. A lot of people call this a gut instinct. It's that small, still voice that's inside of us. And to just block out what the world was trying to tell me that was cool. You know, when I was younger, I was very hungry to obtain, monetary possessions, worldly possessions, experiences, all these sorts of carnal pursuits. And the thing that I would love to tell my younger self is to just operate from a place of vulnerability and authenticity and to lead with love. Because when we operate from vulnerability and authenticity, we're going to actually attract the right things into our life. You were talking about divine appointments. I believe that the Father loves all of us so much, he'll give us unlimited amounts of anything we ask for, which is why we see people in the world that are full of evil and evil things, because that's what they've asked for. So they've gotten lavish, unlimited abundance of all of these things, right? And that was a revelation he shared with me many years ago, was that whatever you want, I love you so much. My love is so unconditional. Even if it's the worst thing for you, I'll still give it to you because you have free will of choice. And so those are the things that I wish I could share with my younger self, is to not worry about what's cool or not cool, not worry about what the world is trying to tell me or the ways that the world is trying to tell me to do business, to press into my internal voice within and get the answers I needed within and to go with what was in my gut.
If you could have dinner with any three people that have influenced your life in a positive way, whether dead or alive, who would you want to have just sit down and have a really awesome, cool dinner with?
Yeah, this is an awesome conversation. First and foremost, for me, it would be Jesus, would be the top of my list. What an awesome, woke individual that was all about step zero and increasing self-awareness in others. Someone else that I would love to meet from history is King David. This guy was an amazing warrior, and he was able to surmount incredible feats of courage through his faith and through listening to the voice that was within him. And more recently, someone that I would love to have dinner with that's still alive, that's one of my current heroes, is I've got a few different people in the mix, but I would have to say that it's Eric Thomas, Dr. Eric Thomas. He's known as the hip hop preacher. You know, I followed a lot of his programs. I went through his Game Changer certified speaker program last year. He is such an exceptional, extraordinary, faith-driven individual. And he is such a great encourager out there of helping people to really, he doesn't say this sort of stuff a lot necessarily, but increase their awareness and get in touch with their faith. And I just love what he's all about. And I would love to have dinner with that guy.
That's a very cool answer. So tell me, what has Jesus done for you in your life?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I'm honored to share this. He's actually saved me from the depths of hell several times. In my pursuits of my carnal desires and worldly things and experiences, I ended up in some pretty dark places throughout my life. And the darkest place was about 4 years ago, actually, almost to the day, in the month of July. And I was very, very addicted to Adderall and Vicodin and muscle relaxers and Xanax. And I was basically on this crazy cocktails of uppers and downers and lefters and righters. And I allowed these people to convince me to do some very bad things in business and to mess over some people that were very close to me. And long story short, in my delusion from my drug addictions, I actually pretty much helped bring some partners into my business and then help them push me right out of my business. So I lost everything. I was so embarrassed and ashamed and down and out that I was actually on the brink of ending my life and committing suicide. And it was in those moments, I get a little bit emotional when I talk about it, but it was in those moments, I was literally standing in my bathroom mirror with my 45 automatic in my hand, thinking to myself, how do I make sure I do this successfully? Because knowing my luck, I'm the guy that would try this and blow half his face off and still live for the rest of his life. You know, so I'm thinking, how do I do this successfully? And it was in those moments that Jesus spoke to me and interrupted me and just said, hey, there's a better way. This isn't it. There's a better life I have for you. And so I pressed into that. I got off the substances and I've spent the last couple of years healing my brain and building my coaching business. And I want to help encourage others in being to encounter Christ so that they can have a concrete foundation to build their life and their business on. The way that the world tries to encourage us to build our life and our business is a house of cards built on quicksand. And those houses go up quick, but more importantly, they come down even quicker. And what we found is that through having Christ as the center of the cornerstone of not just our life, but then being able to bring that into business, it's provided me with happiness, and he's totally saved my life. So it's like not to sound cliche, but the total redemptive story of, being born again, being born anew, and full restoration. So
that is awesome. So Jesus spoke to you, is that right?
Totally. He has on several occasions.
That's amazing. That I'm so glad that we connected, that you could share that story, because, I've been through tons of ups and downs in my entire life, but I really wanted to dig deep to the heart of your issue and who you are and why you are who you are. And so I asked that question. What keeps you up at night?
Yeah. What keeps me up at night is kingdom entrepreneurship. It is my goal. I have this crazy, audacious goal that I want to actually be a part of the catalyst to help bring 1 billion souls to saving in Christ. And that's something that I'm thinking about all day, every day. It's something I think about at night. And in fact, we're actually developing a brand new framework that we're going to be launching later this year that's going to be encouraging people and actually building kingdom intercessor advisory boards. So it's basically the concept of building a team of like a board of advisors, similar to a traditional board of advisors or board of directors, but their only mission is to pray for the people in the business and the entrepreneur and the leader, so that people are actually centered in Christ and continuing to grow in their faith, and to build the people up and put a hedge of protection around them as we work to overtake what's known as the mountain of business, if you and your listeners are familiar with the 7 mountains of influence. So taking the land of the mountain of business and being able to bring 1 billion souls to Christ.
Share with me what kind of a website I can share with our people. How can I help you?
Yeah, awesome. So people can find us at our website, awarenesselevation.com. We have several free resources for people to be able to download. We also have some digital courses and master classes that are launching here in the next couple of weeks. People can keep their eyes peeled for. And we have a really exciting newsletter that comes out weekly, always full of great information on kingdom entrepreneurship. People can also follow me on Instagram at awareness_elevation, and find me on LinkedIn under James F as in Foxtrot, my last name Pyle. So at James F Pyle on LinkedIn. Thanks so much for having me, Dave. It's been a pleasure.
I'm speaking with James Pyle on Fresh Start Podcast. James, I'm so grateful for having you with me today and sharing your story. My last question is typically, what was your very first job? And you already told me what your very first job was knocking door to door and raking leaves. After that, or when you were a teenager, what else did you do as a kid in terms of any kind of job, whatever?
Yeah, so I basically took any job and every job that I could get a hold of. But the one that really stuck with me, the one that I did the most consistently, was when I was 14. I got a job working for some local farmers that run an operation of around 5,000 acres of farmed land, as well as about 1,000 head of cattle. So I actually got a lot of experience being able to build my discipline and my work ethic, because, as you know, anybody who's ever been anywhere near around a farm, there are no hours. It's before the sun comes up till after the sun comes down, 24/7, 365. And just learning that work ethic. It was something you were talking about earlier in buffing the floors. And it's learning that principle of you do the job until the job is done. It doesn't matter if the work day is over, quote unquote, or it doesn't matter if the sun went down. If the job isn't done, you don't quit, and you got to stay in until the job gets done. And maybe sometimes you got to stay up all night to get the job done. It's not something to make a practice or a habit of, but that was a very influential job that I loved and I was grateful for. I started off kind of just spraying weeds, walking through these massive fields, spraying weeds. And I ended up driving, several $100,000 worth of equipment with a humongous tractor and making these 2,000-pound hay bales. And that was a cool experience.
Oh, give me a tractor any day. The John Deere tractor is green. The Ford tractor is blue. The Farmall is red. I know the colors because I love my tractors. Of course, my grandfather wouldn't let me drive his tractor until I was 12 years old. An old 1948B John Deere tractor on his 20 acres of grapes. And of course, the first thing I did was learn to pop wheelies in a John Deere tractor.
Like any young man would do.
Oh my gosh. So I'm speaking with James Pyle today. James is a transitional coach and speaker, and man, I love it. James, thanks for being with me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm Dave Henning with the Fresh Start Podcast, fresh ideas for business and personal growth. Thanks a lot.